First story. My name's Aaron, and I'm writing this because I still can't sleep. Last November, I booked an Airbnb on the ragged coast of Maine, a weather-beaten clapboard cottage perched above black water. The profile boasted storm watcher's paradise, cheap because it was deep off-season. I needed 3 quiet nights to finish grading midterms. No distractions, no campus noise. I arrived under a bruised sky, tires crunching frost, while gulls screamed like something being slaughtered. The host had messaged a lock-box code. She said she'd be in the cities all weekend. The moment I stepped inside, I smelled salt rot, and something older, like wet animal fur left to spoil. The cottage matched the photos, except for one addition, a floor-length mirror, leaning against the living room wall, framed in warped, barnacled driftwood. A post-it was stuck to the glass. "Don't cover." I laughed at the melodrama, and peeled it off, crumpling it into my pocket. The first evening passed quietly. Wind rattled the panes, rain drilled the roof. I microwaved chowder, wrote comments on essays, and finally crawled into the attic bedroom. From the bed I could see the mirror downstairs, its surface taking moonlight like a bruised pond. I drifted off to the booming rhythm of waves. The D2 morning light looked metallic, and the ocean heaved under slate clouds. I hiked the cliff trail behind the cottage to unclog my brain. The air tasted like coins. On a ledge overlooking the surf, I found a little heap of offerings, shells, rusted hooks, and a photograph, water blurred beyond recognition. Something about the arrangement felt ritualistic. As I bent to study it, my phone buzzed, a voicemail from the host. She asked if I had met anyone else yet, her tone half joking, half trembling. I dialed back, but service vanished. Back inside, I noticed wet footprints tracking from the front door to the mirror, and stopping dead, toes pressed to the glass. My own boots were dry, and there were no leaks. I checked the locks, still thrown. The footprints glistened, then slowly dried before my eyes, leaving salt stains shaped like husks of barnacles. Power died around 4 p.m. A sheet of rain erased the horizon and hammered the shingles so hard I felt each nail shiver. I lit the oil lamp provided in the emergency kit, and kept working until dusk, trying to ignore the thickening smell of brine and decay that clung to the walls. I opened a window, but the wind sucked it shut with a violence that cracked the frame. Growling clouds swallowed the last light. The sea below roared as if hungry. As darkness settled, I heard the front door latch clack open, slow, deliberate. I spun toward the hallway. Nothing moved, yet chill air swept in, making the lamp gutter. My phone read, "No services." I slammed the door, slid the deadbolt, shoved a chair under the knob. Decision. When I turned back, the mirror stood in the kitchen doorway, pathologically centered, reflecting nothing but smothering dark. I hadn't touched it since morning. A voice whispered behind me, "You shouldn't have covered the glass." The mirror's surface rippled like water. A pale hand pressed out from inside, fingertips webbed, nails green with sea moss. The hand groped the air, found the lamp, and snuffed the flame. In the blackness something wet dragged itself onto the floorboards with a slither and a thump. I bolted up the stairs, poker raised, but halfway I felt breath at my ear, cold, rotten, tidal. I swung blindly. The metal hit only balmy wind, and the reek of low tide. Upstairs I barricaded the door with the dresser. The thing moved around below, scraping claws, or maybe hooves, across every plank. It began to sing, a low keening somewhere between whale song and broken violin. Between verses it giggled in a voice that was half the host's profile picture and half drowning child. I sobbed into my sleeve, bracing for the crash of the door that never came. D3. I woke to obscene quiet. Dawn seeped gray across the windows, like the inside of a mollusk shell. When I finally found the courage to peek downstairs, the mirror was back against its original wall. A crust of seawater glittered across the floor in a snail trail leading straight to it. Around the frame hung damp ribbons of kelp, as though something had squeezed through a too small doorway, and left part of its skin behind. I packed in under 5 minutes, stepping around the damp footprints that looked like elongated human feet fused with fins. I opened the front door, and almost collided with the host. She was impossibly pale, hair plastered wet against her cheeks, clothes drenched as if she had been pulled from the ocean. Her eyes were filmy, pupils the murky gray of deep water. "You covered it, didn't you?" she croaked. I shook my head, stammering denial, but her gaze drifted toward my pocket where the crumpled post-it bristled. She tried to push past. I slammed the door, and sprinted to my car. As I reversed down the dirt lane, she pounded one hand against the cottage window. Her skin tore from her wrist like seaweed ripping free, exposing cartilage that glistened like fishbone. She didn't bleed. She only mouthed something that fogged the glass. "It follows reflection." I drove for hours before service returned. My frantic call to Airbnb ended in a flat tone. "The listing you requested cannot be found." Curiosity and terror kept me researching while parked at a truck stop diner. Local news archives told me the property belonged to the Dalrymple family, lobstermen reputed to practice old sea rights. 3 years ago the husband vanished during a nor'easter. When the Coast Guard recovered his boat, they found only a mirror lashed to the deck with anchor chain. Surface shivered smooth as ice. The article ran a photo of that mirror. It was the one in the cottage. That night at a cheap motel 200 miles inland, I propped the bathroom mirror against the wall, and sat on the bed, daring my reflection to twitch. At 2:14 a.m. condensation soaked the glass from within. A slow knock came not at the door, but from behind the mirror itself. I wrapped it in towels and hurled it outside, yet even without it, every polished surface phone screen, faucet black TV, began to fog. It has been 6 weeks. I jammed curtains over every reflective thing I own, but each dawn I find one uncovered. Yesterday a saltwater footprint appeared on my hardwood floor, pointing toward my bedroom mirror. Tonight the tide will be at its yearly highest. I can hear the cottage voice already, humming inside the pipes, whispering in faucet drip Morse, "Don't cover, the tide only rises," and every mirror turns to water, inevitably. Second story. My name's Lily, and if you find this scribbled into the guest book, leave now. Last August I rented a cheap adobe brick Airbnb on the edge of New Mexico's Jornada Desert, a parched stretch once littered with silver mines. My brother Jason and I live states apart, and meet every summer to road trip somewhere. Nobody knows us. He found the listing. Historic miner's casita, endless stars, zero light pollution. Photos showed dust-red sunsets and a clawfoot bathtub set beneath a skylight. It looked perfect, and it was dirt cheap, so we booked 3 nights. We arrived near dusk, tires spitting gravel, heat still shimmering above the hard pan. The host messaged instructions and said she'd be visiting family all week. The casita sat alone in a bowl of cracked earth, fronted by a warped porch swing, and a rusty weather vane shaped like a coyote. Inside, everything smelled of scorched sage and engine oil. On the coffee table lay a wind-up music box carved with pickaxes and moons. Taped to its lid, "And never turn after dark." Jason snorted, wound at a half-turn, and it rasped out a broken lullaby before I slapped it shut. Night dropped fast, the desert bleeding its color away. Crickets started up like tiny saw blades. We grilled canned chili on a single propane burner, and drank warm Tecate while Orion's belt rose razor bright. Around 10, Jason wandered outside to smoke. I sat by the open doorway, reading, when he called Lil. "There's a hatch under the porch swing." I stepped out and saw a square of iron embedded in concrete, padlocked but breathing cool air. Someone had drawn a chalk circle around it, symbols jagged as bones. "Probably the septic crawl space," I said. "Then why the lock?" He kicked dust over the chalk until it vanished. We went back inside. I dozed off around midnight in the tiny bedroom. A dry rattling woke me. The music box was playing, soft creaky notes dragging, like a slowed vinyl record. Jason muttered from the sofa half asleep, "Quit winding that thing." I croaked back that I wasn't. The melody stopped abruptly, followed by a faint clunk beneath the floorboards, as if something heavy shifted subterranean timbers. A dust devil howled outside. Sand peppered the windows hard enough to click like fingernails. I stayed awake until the wind died, watching moonlight slither across the ceiling. Day 2. The cold morning sun baked the casita to oven temperature before 8 a.m. We drove into the nearest town, only a gas station and a diner. The waitress asked where we were staying. When Jason told her, her smile collapsed. That place, thought they shut it after what happened to the geologist. She wouldn't elaborate, just refilled our coffees and hurried off. The gas station clerk said the land once sat over a vertical shaft called the Mercy Vein, sealed in the 40s after a dynamite accident. Dozens died, locals avoid it. Back at the Airbnb, we found the front door ajar. Inside, the hatch padlock lay broken on the floor like bitten candy, its shackles sheared clean. Cold air pumped up through the open square. From its throat rose the smell of wet coins and rot. Jason and I argued. He wanted to peer inside. I wanted to leave. While we packed, my phone pinged. Message from the host: saw you open cellar. Do not descend after dusk. Fixing lock tomorrow. No apology, no explanation. We sealed the hatch with a chair and finished daylight beers in stiff silence. Sunset painted the desert blood orange. Flies vanished. Even the wind sounded muffled. I told Jason we should sleep in shifts, drive out at first light. He agreed, but at 11 p.m., he yawned himself unconscious on the sofa. Near 2 a.m., a metallic scrape snagged me out of half sleep. A shape crouched by the hatch, shoulders like folded tarps, head hidden in shadow. It lifted the heavy door effortlessly and slipped below. A smell of damp limestone flooded the room. The music box started by itself, tune jangling faster than before, gears screaming at full wind. Jason woke, eyes glassy, and staggered toward the opening, as though pulled by wires. I grabbed his wrist. Wake up, they're singing, he whispered, voice not his own. Cold moist air poured up, carrying whispers layered over the melody, dozens of hoarse throats chanting out of sync. I hauled Jason back. He fought limply, gaze fixed on the dark well. Something climbed graceful as water, hands clawed raw, faces masked in glimmering ore dust, eyes reflecting the dim like distant lanterns. Each wore a miner's helmet split with age. Each mouth hung slack, silver teeth rattling along with the tune. One reached the threshold, kneeling on ruined kneecaps. Its helmet light flickered to life, illuminating the chalk smear Jason had kicked away. It hissed, and every other voice hissed with it. 100 echoes from below. Jason screamed, finally lucid. I yanked the music box, slapped it shut, and the melody strangled. Mid-note. The figures froze, powdered eyes reeling upward, confused by sudden silence. I slammed the hatch door and shoved the sofa over it. The wood splintered as weight pounded against the underside. Glass shattered somewhere in the dark. We ran. No shoes, no keys, just terror. The desert night clawed our lungs with cold as we sprinted to the car. Jason hammered the ignition. Gravel spit headlights carved across empty sand. In the rear-view mirror the casita's windows glowed with helmet lights, dozens of them swarming like fireflies in a jar. Then the bulbs snuffed one by one. By daylight, the place looked harmless, but the sheriff still refused to search. Trespass legend, nothing more. He wrote our statement while filing his nails. Airbnb offered a voucher and quietly delisted the property. Jason mailed the broken padlock to me. As a joke, it arrived weeping black moisture, box soaked through. I dumped it in a creek and watched tiny silver flakes float away like spores. 4 weeks later, a plain envelope arrived. Inside was desert sand that when spilled arranged itself into minor shapes with raised pickaxes, then blew apart on a windless floor. Again, sometimes late, my vents whistled a tune from that music box, though I never turned it again. Jason claims he sees helmet lights shining behind his backyard shed. Neither of us sleeps through storms anymore. Wind against the house sounds too much like pickaxes against adobe. If you book a desert getaway because it's cheap and the stars look pretty, remember the ground is never truly sealed. I still hear them chanting beneath the floorboards of my skull, begging someone to finish the song they died hearing. The music waits,
patient as stone. Third story. My name's Ivy, and I'm typing this while the battery icon blinks red. If the screen goes dark before dawn, someone else will have to finish the story. Sam and I booked the old Kettling farmhouse because every hotel within 50 miles of Des Moines was sold out for homecoming weekend. The listing promised vintage charm, wide open skies, perfect for photographers, though we needed a cheap base while we drove the rural back roads shooting abandoned barns for my MFA project. It was late October, harvest done, the cornfields shaved to a dull stubble. A little creepy, sure, but nothing we couldn't turn into a joke. We reached the place Friday at dusk, headlights skating across endless rows of blackened stalks still standing like soldiers who'd forgotten the war had ended. The farmhouse loomed 2 stories, white paint peeled to gray scales. The keypad code worked, the door sagged inward on a breath of dust and cold. Inside smelled of hay, as if someone had stored bales in the living room. Every floorboard gave a different groan. On the mantel stood a gramophone, the color of dried blood. A yellowed index card leaned against its horn. No music after midnight. Sam laughed, snapped a picture, and mimed putting on a record. I grabbed his wrist. Humor me, and don't turn it, I said. We were both too tired to argue, so we unpacked our gear and heated canned soup on the ancient stove. While we ate, the sun slipped under the horizon, leaving only the moon and the red pulse of a distant cell tower. The house had no curtains. Every window was a black mirror reflecting our own lamplight. I kept thinking I saw movement behind us in the glass, but it was only the sway of the kerosene flame. We decided to explore before bed. At the back of the property, an enormous barn leaned like a drunk against the night. The padlock on its doors dangled broken. We pushed inside with our phone flashlights. Shapes dangled from the rafters, scarecrows, dozens of them stitched from burlap and dressed in real clothing, from wedding gowns to toddler overalls. Straw leaked from their sleeves like bone marrow. Something skittered across the loft above and fled. Sam muttered, "Art installation." I whispered, "Let's go." Days 2. I woke before dawn to the smell of fresh soil. A single cornstalk lay across the kitchen tiles, roots wet, as though it had crawled inside. The front door was still locked from the inside, chain latched. I tossed the stalk out onto the porch before Sam saw. Afraid he'd tease me for superstitions, we spent the day driving gravel roads lined by walls of corn, gray sky pressing low. Everywhere we stopped, I felt watched, ears full of a constant dry whisper that might have been wind or might not. By dusk we were back, memory cards full, nerves frayed. I found muddy footprints in the foyer, leading in from nowhere and stopping at the gramophone. The print looked like a bare human foot, but too long, with an extra joint where the arch should be. Sam said one of us probably tracked mud earlier. We argued until the bulb in the hallway popped, plunging us into darkness. A hard rain started after 10. Skinny drops hitting the roof like gravel. We played cards by battery lantern. Just before midnight, the storm died suddenly. Silence so deep my ears rang. Sam glanced at his phone. 12:03 a.m. From downstairs the gramophone crank squealed one slow turn. We froze. The machine rasped again, faster, until the needle dropped onto a phantom record and a song bled out. Scratchy violin warbling a children's lullaby. Sam hissed, "We didn't wind it." I grabbed his arm. Rule said, "No music after midnight." The song grew louder, speakers that shouldn't exist. Outside, corn leaves rustled even though the wind was gone. Something brushed the siding, circled the house on straw-soft feet. A faint tapping began on every window, as if dozens of fingernails tested the glass. Sam sprinted downstairs and ripped the needle off. The lullaby slowed to a death groan and stopped. The tapping stopped with it. For a heartbeat, the only sound was rain returning in the distance. Then a single knock came from the kitchen door. Slow, heavy. We did it. Days 3 morning light revealed nothing but silver fog choking the fields. We packed to leave, but my car wouldn't turn over. Jumper cable sparked, battery stone dead. Cell signal had vanished completely. The nearest farmhouse looked abandoned. We were trapped. At noon, Sam noticed every scarecrow missing from the barn. Hay littered the floor in ragged piles, as though the figures had stepped down and walked away. In the dust beside the door, Someone had drawn a spiral of child-sized footprints leading toward the house. We locked every entrance, pushed the dining table against the front door, and waited. Dusk bled across the sky. The silence thickened until even our breathing sounded intrusive. At 11:58 p.m., I set my phone on the table. Even though it showed only searching, I watched the digits crawl. 11:59, 12 o'clock, 12:01. The gramophone spun to life without a crank. The same lullaby but reversed, notes stumbling backward. Window panes rattled gently, not from wind but from pressure, as though the dark were exhaling against the glass. Straw slid under the door in thin skeins, curling like fingers. I yanked Sam upstairs, dragged a dresser across the bedroom threshold. The melody floated up the stairwell, slower now, each reversed note a question left hanging. Something heavy stepped onto the first stair. Boards creaked in a counting rhythm. 1, 2, 3. The song kept perfect time. Straw hissed beneath the bedroom door, piling in drifts. Sam and I retreated to the far wall, clutching the tripod like a spear. Step 14 groaned. Just outside, the doorknob twisted left-right, testing. The dresser shuddered as weight pressed from the other side. The lullaby's final chord held, stretching like a scream too afraid to leave the throat. The knob turned once more, carefully, and stopped. Silence. Soon, across the room my phone woke, screen lighting the dark. No signal, no battery, yet numbers glowed white. 12:07 a.m. The gramophone needle clicked back to the start. Footsteps resumed, slower, deliberate, every board singing with strain. The straw beneath the door began to rise, forming the loose suggestion of a hand reaching toward the latch. Sam whispered, "We should have broken the record." My voice wouldn't work. I could only watch the straw twist into knuckles. The song started its second verse, sweeter than before, as the dresser slid half an inch across the floor, and the door began to open.